Every decision starts with a direction. Welcome to the Inner Compass podcast show. I am your host, Jackson Ogo, and today we'll be exploring the power of self-compassion, the quiet strength in choosing understanding, patience, and grace for ourselves and for others. Let's begin. There was a man named Marcus. On the outside, he looked like he had it all together. A stable job, a decent apartment, friends who cared, but inside it felt like a storm was constantly raging. Every mistake felt monumental. Every failure echoed in his mind long after the moment had passed. He was his own harshest critic, replaying every word, every choice, and every shortcoming. Marcus tried everything to quiet the storm. He worked harder, distracted himself with routines, even pushed people away to avoid letting anyone see the cracks. But yet, the more he fought against himself, the louder that inner voice became. The one who told him that he wasn't enough, that he was failing, that he was too weak. One day, after yet another night of restless sleep and replaying the same regrets over and over, Marcus paused. He realized something simple and yet revolutionary. He had been treating himself worse than he would ever treat anyone else. He had compassion for his friends, patience for his colleagues, kindness for strangers, but never for himself. So he began small. At first, it was tiny gestures, telling himself it was okay to make a mistake, or I'm doing my best right now. And when the critical voice rose, he didn't argue. He listened. He acknowledged it, but he didn't have to obey it. Slowly, Marcus learned to treat himself with curiosity instead of judgment, to sit with discomfort instead of running from it, to meet his own struggles with patience. Over time, something remarkable happened. That voice inside, once his harshest critic, began to shift. It started to guide him rather than tear him down. It reminded him when he needed rest, encouraged him when he doubted himself, and celebrated the small victories he had previously ignored. Marcus had transformed his inner dialogue. He turned his inner self into his greatest ally. With that change, Marcus didn't become perfect. Life still challenged him, obstacles still appeared, and setbacks still happened. But he moved through them differently. He took risks he had avoided, embraced failure as a teacher, and treated himself with the same grace he had always extended to others. He realized that healing and growth wasn't about changing who he was. They were about learning to walk alongside himself, patient, compassionate, and unwavering, no matter what life threw his way. And for the first time in years, Marcus felt steady, not because life had become easier, but because he had become his own strongest support. When was the last time you gave yourself the same compassion you give to everyone else? Maybe it's the man who feels the weight of providing, leading, and holding everything together, yet criticizes himself the moment he feels overwhelmed or unsure. Or it's the woman who shows up for everyone around her, family, friends, work, but quietly holds herself to impossible standards and calls it strength. From an early age, many of us are taught quiet expectations. Men are often told to be strong, steady, and unshaken. Women are often expected to be nurturing, supportive, and endlessly giving. Strength without softness, care for others without always receiving it in return. And somewhere within these expectations, we learn to extend grace outwards while withholding it from ourselves. We move through life trying to meet standards, carry responsibilities, and keep pushing forward, even when we're tired, even when we fall short, even when we're simply human. And in those moments, self-compassion can feel unfamiliar, sometimes underdeserved. Today is an invitation to pause, to meet yourself with patience in the middle of growth, with understanding in the middle of mistakes, with compassion in the moments you need it most. Because when compassion begins within, it becomes the foundation for real healing and the starting point for meaningful growth. Why is self-compassion the key to healing and growth? Self-compassion is a key to healing and growth because you can't repair what you keep attacking. When people make mistakes or fall short, The default response is often self-criticism. I should have known better. What's wrong with me? That voice doesn't create change. It creates shame, and shame keeps people stuck. Here's a few ways self-compassion interrupts that cycle. Self-compassion creates emotional safety by requiring honesty with yourself. It creates a safe internal space where you can say things like, I messed up, I'm hurting, I need to do better, without spiraling into self-rejection. Self-compassion reduces fear and increases resilience. If every mistake leads to internal punishment, the brain learns risk equals pain. Self-compassion teaches the mind, even if I fail, I'll support myself. That makes it easier to try again, to take meaningful steps, and to step outside your comfort zone. Self-compassion improves mental health and self-talk. Your inner voice shapes your emotional state. Harsh self-talk fuels anxiety, depression, and self-doubt. Compassionate self-talk builds stability, clarity, and confidence. You begin replacing those automatic thoughts from I'm not enough or I don't have enough time to I'm learning or I will make the time. Over time, your internal environment becomes a place of support instead of pressure. And when we begin to practice self-compassion, everything changes, starting with the voice inside your head. What if that voice, the one that constantly criticizes, doubts, or tells you you're not enough, becomes your strongest ally? What would it feel like if it guided you forward rather than held you back? Right now, it might rush in with judgment or pressure, reminding you that you should be faster, stronger, or better. But imagine if it spoke with understanding, if it reminded you that mistakes are part of learning, setbacks are a part of growing, and that you are enough exactly as you are. When your inner voice becomes your ally, fear loses its grip, risk feels possible, failure teaches instead of tear you down. You move through life with curiosity, patience, and grace towards yourself and towards others. This is the moment where self-compassion becomes more than a concept. It becomes the foundation for real healing and lasting growth. You, yourself, as much as anyone in the entire universe, deserves your love and affection. Buddha. As we come to the end of this episode, I want you to remember this. Self-compassion isn't weakness. It's one of the greatest forms of strength. Today, we talked about what happened when you stop being your own harshest critic and start becoming your own greatest ally. We explored how healing begins the moment you treat yourself with patience instead of punishment, how growth accelerates when your inner voice shifts from judgment to understanding, and how real change starts when you give yourself permission to be human while still striving to be better. Self-compassion creates emotional safety. It allows you to be honest about your mistakes without drowning in shame. It gives you the grace to keep going when life feels heavy, and it builds a foundation strong enough to support real lasting growth. So this week, pay attention to the way you speak to yourself. Offer yourself the same understanding you give to others, because when self-compassion begins within, everything around you begins to change. And next episode, we'll build on that foundation. In episode 12, The Power of Resilience, we'll explore what happens after compassion, how you keep moving forward through adversity, pressure, and uncertainty. We'll talk about the daily habits, mindset, and inner strength that allows you to rise, adapt, and grow through life's challenges. Because self-compassion helps you heal. Resilience helps you keep going. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.